Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 112. Dom's back this week.
Yeah, my spidey senses are tingling. Whatever. Yeah, sure.
Oh, God.
Something else was tingling last week, apparently.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
More than a tingle.
Jordan? Yeah. Jordan's back this week as well. He was here last week.
Jared, it's great to have you here. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic.
Great to have you on the show, Jared.
So episode 112, in terms of what we've been playing, it was actually a really slow week for me. In all honesty, the only thing I pretty much did in video games was swing around New York. I had already, obviously I talked about last week, platinuming Spider-Man, but I didn't have a whole lot of time, and I was like, what do I want to do with the little bit of time I have? So I just loaded up Spider-Man and just swung around the city. I was actually debating starting up a second run of the story on a different save file. I don't know.
Jesus.
It's just we're in that in between period where like I'm picking up Assassin's Creed Odyssey when it comes out, and then rolling into Red Dead. So I'm just like,
What about the DLC for Spidey?
I already have that pre-purchase. I bought the deluxe edition when it came out.
So you're in for that?
Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, I'm just waiting. I'm in the in-between stages. Also, one thing I want to talk about. I don't want to go on a long conversation about it. It's just a point that I wanted to make is that, remember last week we were talking about, and me and you have differing opinions on it, Jordan, how when you finish missions, they kind of hold the single-player mission for a little bit. Maybe like,
Yes.
It's anywhere between like 30 seconds to a minute. It's really weird.
I love
yeah.
that, by the way. I never got to spit out on that, but I like that.
Yeah, so me and Jordan had a conversation about that last week, and talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that happens after every mission, and then when I actually was watching other people play through it doesn't, and it seems like the missions they select to do it on are contextually, they give you a reason as to why you couldn't go to the next story mission right away, but I also understand where Jordan's coming from of like, hey, if I just want to go there, I don't need I get the context, you just don't need to give me the time, you know what I mean? I can put the context in my head, so...
It also just seems very arbitrary the way it works, but as far as the time.
Yeah. I think it's just they want you to start swinging, and then once you're far enough away from whatever it is, then it's like...
It's just almost pointless, I don't know.
I did have a few...
We have different opinions on it.
I did have a few weird moments where, for the most part, it felt natural when they do things like that, but there was like one weird moment where it was like, oh, I gotta be at MJ's for dinner, but then I went and did something else, and Peter made a comment like, oh man, I'm gonna be in so much trouble, or whatever, she's gonna be pissed basically, but then like it was fine and nothing came of it, even though I just did this whole other thing. I don't know, it was just a weird, their formula didn't quite work at that one, I guess. I don't know.
Well, that story mission also gets interrupted by another actual main story mission when you have to go to the lab with Otto.
Yeah, that's what it was. So it was still main story, but it just felt like I don't know, it just seemed a little weird, I guess. I don't know. Weird, like not even a real complaint, just
In terms of what I've been watching and stuff, I don't think I watched anything either. I was planning to watch The Dragon Prince. I can't remember if that's the name of the title. The new series from the Avatar Last Airbender guys, that's on Netflix. I didn't get around to that either, unfortunately.
Speaking of...
Yeah, and real quick, the last thing is... I read a lot of comics, but in terms of the ones I've read so far this week that came out this week that were really good, the Spider-Man annual came out, which is interesting. It's about Miles Morales. It's a little short story about him and having to deal. It's a story from like when he's in school and having to deal with like rich kids, because he doesn't necessarily come from like the best neighborhood. So it's like a story about him talking to his uncle Aaron Davis, and his uncle warning him that he's not like the other kids. He has to earn everything because a lot of them are like trust fund kids and yada yada yada. It's a really neat story there. They also released the annual for Captain America, and that one's really good. It's about him and Bucky during like way back when he originally became Captain America, and it's a side story of them saving some people from Nazis, but it's not any Jewish people. They're actually, I think, Romanian. And one of them is actually a gay Russian, and there's like... So it's a really cool story of them talking about Captain America saving people who aren't inherently Jewish from Nazis. It's a really cool small story. And then the other one was Batman Damned, which we talked about in our chat. Dom, I told you that launched this week. that was interesting. It features Constantine. Obviously, he's like an unreliable narrator, so that's really interesting in terms of the writing and how the pages unfold. There's a huge controversy because the original
It
art
also
for
features
it also features Bruce Wayne's penis, which wasn't
the
in
shadow.
Yeah.
The shadow.
It wasn't in the retail version, so like I heard about all this controversy and I was reading through. I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot I'm going to see Bruce Wayne's penis at some point," and then I did it, and I was like, "Oh, I felt cheated." Like,
No, it was. So it was in the physical retail version,
But
and
not
then they're
digital.
going to change the rest of the prints. But yeah, they had already changed the digital, and so
Yeah.
only people that bought the physical book have got that treasure of the shadow.
Yeah. Enjoyed that. It's interesting. It's also under DC's Black Label, which is the thing that everybody wants the big publishers to do with comics, which is...
Showing off dogs.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're standalone stories, so they get creators to come in and just tell stories out of continuity that are just their own thing. So Batman Damned is 3 issues. That's pretty much it for me in terms of what I watch and stuff. I wanted to get around to Atypical, which is a really good Netflix original show about a kid with autism who's on the spectrum, and it's his family and stuff. And then American Vandal Season 2 I wanted to get around to too, but I didn't get around to anything this week, so pretty nothing week for me in terms of entertainment and stuff. So what about you guys?
Well, let me get in. Let me get
Since
in.
you mentioned...
Because I'm going to cut you off. This is what I do. I haven't watched American Vandal Season 2. I haven't watched any more of Ozark Season 2. And actually, I haven't gotten around to Stranger Things Season 2. I'm just trying to piss off Jordan right now.
Oh, yeah, the comment. I forgot about that.
You can go ahead, though, Jordan, for real.
As long as you're not going to try to act like a fucking critic and be like, oh, let me tell you about this groundbreaking new television experience. Season 1 of Stranger Things. It changed my life. And then I'm like, Dom, did you like Stranger Things Season 2? You're like, oh, I didn't even fuck with it. That would be something that would piss me off. But you weren't like... You were never like, oh, let me tell you about these television experiences.
To be honest, I mean, actually, I probably would have said some, snobby shit like that about Ozark when I first watched Season 1. But Stranger Things, like, the first
awesome.
couple episodes, like, I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is awesome. I like what they're doing here. But by the end of it, I was kind of burnt out on it already. I was like, all right, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, what have you been doing?
Well, here's something that I could never be burned out on. Since Jared mentioned the Dragon Prince, which is, some of the people that worked on Avatar The Last Airbender, they're bringing a live-action, remake of the original series to Netflix, which they've already done in movie form and didn't turn out super well with M. Night Shyamalan. So we'll see how this goes, but
It has the writers, right?
Well, that's the best part, is it's the original creators that are working on it. And they've done some of the comic books, and they obviously did the sequel series, Legend of Korra, which I fucking love and actually think might, or probably is, better than the original series. But I've just been wanting this whole... I mean, like I said, they're continuing in the comic books, but I just want this franchise to continue because it's so cool. And I'd like to see the next, who the next Avatar is after Korra, but, I'm down with this. So, super excited about that, even though it's not really related to video games. And then, what I watched, I should give a shout out to Justice League Season 2, finished that up. And so then I went ahead and started Batman Beyond Season 1.
Ooh.
And god damn, I fucking love this show so much. I wish we had an HD remaster. We're just now getting the remaster of the animated series. So it might be a while for Beyond. But it still looks and sounds so great, even in DVD quality. So
you have the DVDs then?
I have the digital files, but...
oh, jeez. How did you get those?
Well,
Never
out
mind,
on the
don't answer.
open seas. Out on the open seas, there's many ways to acquire such things. So I should also give a shout out. I started watching Venture Bros. I enjoy it. We'll see how far down the line I go with that, but it's a cool show. I should give a shout out to Back to the Future, which obviously I'm a big Rick and Morty fan, but I've never seen the original movie series that inspired it. So I watched the first two, and very enjoyable movies, and totally get why they're so beloved, I guess. I gotta give a big shout out to an anime OVA series from, I guess, the late 80s called Bubblegum Crisis. And it's like this cyberpunk series with like heavy 80s vibes. And it is in HD, and it is freaking gorgeous. And the animation, like the hand-drawn animation, is just out of this freaking world. So I gotta give a big shout out to that. And there's definitely like 80s cheesiness to it, I guess you could say, but I'm really enjoying it. So it's a short series, but so far it's really, I don't know, it's a treasure, I guess you could say. So, and then of course I finished up Spider-Man, and I won't say anything about the ending because I'll let Dom come in and let us know what he thought before I color your impressions, I guess.
Look out for our spoiler cast too. Once all three of us finish it, we're going to be doing a spoiler cast where we talk about everything. So look forward to that as well.
Sure.
I'm excited for that because... Are you done, Jordan? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, obviously I've talked a lot about the game, but I enjoyed it very much. So we'll talk about the complete thing later on.
So I haven't finished the game. I haven't played anything in like the past week, but I never did throw out my 2 cents on Spider-Man. I actually haven't listened to last week's podcast, actually. Shame on me. But I assume you guys spent a good amount of time talking about Spider-Man. So
yeah, like 40 minutes, I think, actually. Yeah.
It's worth the time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just like, shows how much we had to say about it.
So yeah, I'll keep it real quick. I mean, I've been playing it, and I assume I loved it just as much as both of you guys did. Jared, it seems like you especially are like just balls deep in that thing. Because it's good, man. Like, Jesus. I mean, I don't know. Like, is there a better... The way you describe it, you're like, I got a platinum, and like, I might go back again. And I'm like, dude, like, okay, damn. Anyway.
Yeah,
the game is like, it's phenomenal. I mean, I can, like, my takeaway so far, and I'm not even done, like, this is a better version of any of the Arkham games, I think, easily, in pretty much every aspect. The only thing that Arkham games do better is that they have Batman. And I happen to prefer Batman to Spider-Man, but anyway.
Okay.
I don't know, to me...
It's a legacy
Fair
thing,
enough.
too, because like a lot of the stuff in Spider-Man owes it to the Arkham series with a lot of its systems and stuff.
Yeah.
It just...
Yeah.
So.
But I'm like, yeah, obviously, like, the traversal is just stupid good in Spider-Man. I'm sure that's been said many times by us and everyone else, you know, who's even seen the game. And the combat, I think, is
Who has eyes, yeah.
it's, like, so much better than, like, the Arkham combat. There's so much more to it. It's, like, it's so much more varied. Not just in, like, you know, crazy button combos that you have to learn kind of varied, but it's, like, simple. There's different things you can do and jump around and, you know, grab things and swing them at people while you're jumping and different... I don't know. There's just a lot to it. But it's still friendly, and, like, even people like me who aren't into, like, the button combo bullshit, it's easy to grasp and do different fun stuff when you're fighting. Like, so the combat is just superb, and, like, so far, not totally done, but the story is just, like, it's really engaging. It's better than, you know, some of the Spider-Man movies, at least some of them, probably most of them. But yeah, it's all good, man. Spider-Man's been great, and I'm this weekend. I'm not. You know what? I am gonna say it this weekend. I will beat it. So certainly by the next time we talk, I'll have it beat. But
Awesome.
yeah,
Nice.
So
Especially towards the end of the game, things start rolling a lot quicker. Because it's I think the pacing is good in the game, but like for most of the game, it's like kind of a slower burn, and then towards the end, it ramps up really quickly, going from thing to thing. So I think you should be able to roll into the end pretty well.
yeah,
And then you said you are going for the platinum, right? You're gonna try to get that bad boy.
yeah. It seems like it'll be pretty easy, just kind of rolling through and like doing all the side stuff. I like it. I like the variety of different side things where it's not just one collectible. Because for example, like I already got all the backpacks. That was like one of the first things I did. I was like, as soon as they introduced that, I'm like, perfect excuse to just fly the hell around and just grab these things. And then honestly, every time you pick one up, I'm like, sit and listen to the explanation of it. Some of them were dumb throwaways, but a lot of the backpack collectibles were like, holy crap, that was actually an interesting little piece of story that It was something. I don't know.
I've had to stop.
But
I've had to cut myself off of doing that, like with the little tidbits in video games, because it's hard enough to remember the main story of a game for me, and so I'm just like, I'm sure that some writer worked really hard on these tidbits that they wrote into this in-world universe book or whatever, but I can't do it anymore. But I'm sure they have like really cool stuff. I like the pictures at least.
Yeah, it's all pretty
like,
cool.
There's even some small Easter eggs, like the card that Peter gets as his go away from the Daily Bugle. If you click on it and you open it up, it actually has a signature from Eddie Brock in it. It's like that's the only way you would know that Eddie Brock is, like, quote unquote still around. You'd assume that, but that was cool to see that as well.
I did hear one where he's talking about his and Mary Jane's first date, and then they go there in a cutscene and talk about it. So yeah, they like reference the stuff in the story.
You want to hear a funny anecdote that I found out about? Dom, you've already had the scene where he cooks for Mary Jane, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you know how he talks about the dumpling incident?
Oh, before that, actually, you finish first.
So apparently that's actually a meta joke with the developers, because they had an idea that they felt was terrible, that the game was originally going to open up with Martin Lee at like a dumpling shop, and that's where like Peter finds out that he's Mr. Negative, and they're like, oh, that's kind of like partially overtly racist a little bit, so like, let's not do that. So then the whole dumpling thing is actually a meta reference to themselves of like, oh, they're not the dumpling fiasco. It's pretty cool.
Well, anyway. Well, in that same scene then where he's cooking dinner,
totally meta.
Because Emily is sitting next to me while I'm playing or whatever, and MJ goes, wow, that smells good. What are you making? And he says, curry. It's like, dude, how many people cannot identify the smell of curry? Damn it.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, Emily pointed that out to me. I was like, yeah, that's kind of a whatever. But it was just
I think
funny.
it's just one of those. It's just one of those social cue things of like, you know what somebody's doing or you know whatever, and you say it out of like social conversation.
Like, how you doing? So. Good, or whatever. You just say it to say it. Yeah. But anyway,
it's like somebody orders food at a restaurant and they're like scarfing it down. You're like, is that good? It's like, well, yeah, it's a rhetorical question. Of course, it's good.
Yeah, yeah. It was just like a funny moment, I guess. But like I was saying about the collectibles, I really like how they have so many different kinds, and they force you to get all the different kinds to get upgrades, right? Where like your upgrades require it gets a little bit confusing at first. Like, well, what do I need to do to get this? This piece of whatever to upgrade. But I like it forces you to do the different activities that you might not otherwise do. Like, it forces you to try all the different challenges if you want to be able to upgrade or buy this suit or whatever it is. So I actually really like that. That was something unique. I don't know that I've ever seen something quite as weird or whatever, new like that. I thought it was a cool way to do those. But otherwise, overall, Spider-Man's an awesome game, and I'm really digging it. So that's pretty much all I got to do.
Before we hop into the news, the one thing I wanted to mention, minor spoiler for the game, is something that I took for granted or I didn't even think about. Stan Lee being in the game. I don't want to mention where the cameo is for people who haven't gotten it or seen it, but like that was something that's so obvious of like, oh yeah, Stan Lee's going to cameo in this game, but I didn't even, like personally, I didn't even think that was...
Full fucking motion capture.
I had the same, Jared, I had the same exact thought as you where I was like, when it happened, I was like, oh! But I'm like, oh, well, duh. Why did that fucking get me? Of course. Yeah. But it got me too, yeah.
And the crazy thing is, like, they talk about he went into the studio and did full motion capture for it.
Seriously.
Which is a testament to, like, Jordan brought this up too, is like Jordan really thinks that one of the strengths of this game is the voice acting and like the facial recognition. Like, the animation is like great.
Definitely.
Before we hop into the news, in terms of, you said we were both high on it, I would say I'm higher on it obviously than Jordan is. And obviously you can step in here, Jordan. I don't want to necessarily speak for you, but he liked it a lot, but he did have some holdbacks, so we'll probably talk about it in the spoiler cast more so than me. He had some issues with it.
Yeah, there's a couple quirky things. Sure. I had some bugs too, There's some things I'm like...
that's a toss-up too, because like I've seen the bugs, I'm like, I didn't experience any of those. Yeah. I'm just lucky, because that's not, it's just whatever.
One of those.
So let's hop into the news. We have quite a bit of news stories here. It's pretty PlayStation centric. Ever since I bought a PS4, I've made the jump. No longer, I don't care about Xbox. I'm kidding.
Just throw it all away, right? Fuck.
Yeah, just throw it all away.
PlayStation.
Have no loyalties. So the first bit of news is actually sad, but there is an optimistic side to it. So Capcom has shut down Capcom Vancouver, which is the studio behind the Dead Rising games. This is by way of Kotaku, Stephen Totillo. Capcom confirmed this week that their main Western studio, Capcom Vancouver, is shutting down. There was some previous layoffs earlier in the year that kind of showed that this might happen. According to Capcom, the move was made so they could focus development on major titles in Japan. The move will reportedly set Capcom back $40 million, but more importantly, 158 people lost their jobs in the move. Reports are stating, however, that a majority of these ex-Capcom Vancouver employees have found jobs at EA Vancouver, which is the studio that helps with FIFA and NHL. So obviously, if you work for EA, there's a chance you could have your studio shut down, but the fact that it's a studio that works on FIFA, which is like their most profitable franchise, it's like that's great that they landed there. It's in Vancouver too, so it's they don't have to get displaced or anything like that.
That's
it's
the
really
coolest
awesome.
part of that, yeah. I hope it was a good chunk of them, because that's awesome, dude. If you get hit with that news, but then it's like, oh, you get a job doing close to the same thing in the same city, that'd be like, whew. Some relief.
Yeah, and the thing is, as much crap as we talk about EA, I'm assuming that the benefits for working for that company are pretty rock solid. You know what I mean? So, I'd assume, anyways. Who knows? Might have a story in a couple of months that that's not the case, but who knows? Yeah. A couple of questions I have for you guys is, why do you think they were shut down? Obviously, there's the business standpoint of Capcom didn't think it was worth it, yada yada yada. But like in terms of they worked on Dead Rising, they were their primary Western studio. And they said they're focusing on Japanese development. Like, why do you think they were shut down? And also, with this move, on top of that, what do you think the future is for Dead Rising?
It's not the brightest.
Yeah, I don't see much in that regard of a future at all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe like spin-offs and stuff. I don't know.
The thing is for a game developed by a Western studio, don't you think that Dead Rising was like weirdly and quirkily Japanese in its roots?
Yeah,
like, it did feel very Japanese. So, do you think that it transitioning to like a Japanese studio working on it, do you think it'll feel like Dead Rising still?
Honestly, it would probably, if they're going to do something with that, and I mean, they will. It's just a matter of like when and what it looks like. But I think it would look like something different, very different.
Yeah.
Because I want to say Dead Rising 4 was the last one to come out, right?
Yes.
And then 3 was a year or 2 or 3 or something before that.
It was almost a launch title for the Xbox One.
Okay, yeah, because it was exclusive to Xbox at least. But I don't know, those games just felt kind of like, I didn't play either. I haven't played any of them, so I might be speaking ignorantly. But especially as of late, it kind of felt like it's another Dead Rising game, and that was the headline. It came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Dead Rising. I don't know. It just seemed like it doesn't have much.
I just think
excitement to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of Capcom games that need to be focused on more than Dead Rising, so hopefully they'll do that.
Yeah, and I mean, in the long run, I wouldn't even be surprised if the IP was purchased by somebody else, because I could easily see that happening too, and I don't think THQ Nordic, or Xbox, because it depends on how much they'd be willing to sell the IP for and stuff like that. And I do agree with you that like, though Dead Rising is beloved and has definitely a cult following and it sold decent, it never sold great after the first one anyways, and its gimmick was never innovated on. It was just like, there's a ton of zombies, kill them all, we have an achievement to kill way too many, and then that was kind of thing, and there was like dumb quirky jokes about the weapons you would make, but there was never an advancement, right, to meet all these other games that are breaking the industry in terms of their advancements with mechanics or visual fidelity. So it just seems like it was a franchise that was stagnant. So maybe the shakeup here will bring us something worthy of a new Dead Rising game. Who knows? But most importantly, I'm just glad that a lot of those people reportedly have jobs again. So it's crazy that Capcom would be willing to bite the bullet on $40 million. You'd have to think like Monster Hunter's success this year probably allows them to do that a lot easier. And it also Devil May Cry coming out and Mega Man. It seems like, okay, Resident we're fine Evil. With a $40 million loss. Yeah, and Resident Evil early next year. So we'll see what happens. Glad to see those people get new jobs. I mentioned Monster Hunter World. We're going to be talking about the August 2018 NPD numbers. These came by way of VentureBeat, Jeff Grubb. So the key highlights of August's NPDs include Madden having its best launch sales since 2013.
Wow,
which is interesting because the NFL has been shedding viewership, and there's a lot of arguments as to, does that have to do with the kneeling? Does it have to do with the move to digital media and them not kind of making that jump? Like, sports is kind of the only last thing on basic cable or regular cable that has people subscribing to those services, because it's hard to watch NFL games through digital service. You know what I mean? It's not like the majority yet.
It is changing now.
Exactly, especially with like Sling TV and YouTube TV and a bunch of other services. Another big highlight was Monster Hunter launched on PC, and it finished pretty highly in the NPDs, which we'll get to. So it had a great launch. People were worried. They're like, will it translate to PC? Are people excited? It's like been like an 8-month wait, right? August to January. So
That seems like a PC ass game to begin with to me. I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other big highlight here is Modern Warfare 2 entered backwards compatibility in August, and it landed in the top 10 on the NPDs.
Fucking absurd, dude.
Yeah. So there's obviously the argument of like, is backwards compat really worth it in the long run? Do people play it enough? This is kind of a notch in the positive direction of that, of like, you can release a game. Also, it's buffed up by the fact it's a Call of Duty game, so don't take it entirely at face value.
We were just talking about how you can play Red Dead Redemption, the original, in 60 frames per second, and you can get a used copy of that, or you could buy it digital. But either way, I think it's obviously been worth it for Microsoft.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Definitely.
And I think the front end work was a lot more difficult. But I think now in the back end, now that they have it streamlined, I'm pretty sure it's pretty easy. You know what I mean? Now they got that all figured out. And lastly, hardware sales were up 22% year over year. And unlike other previous months, the big three effectively tied in terms of dollar sales. So they all came out kind of even, which is really interesting. You would assume that, well, I guess no, I'm thinking a month early. I was going to say with Spider-Man, the PlayStation might have been above, but that's September NPDs, not August, Jared, you idiot. So we're going to go over...
Oh, you fucking dummy.
Idiot. We're going to go over the top 10 games for August. And remember, any Nintendo exclusive title doesn't include digital, and for Madden, there's no digital PC sales included. I don't know why. It's weird, but it is what it is. So number 10, Super Mario Odyssey. Number 9, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Number 8, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That's the backwards compat, obviously, which is crazy. Number 7, God of War. So it's kind of fallen off a little bit. I mean, it's still in the top 10, which is great, but for a couple of months there, we were seeing it in the top 5 a lot. So number 7, God of War. Number 6, Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker.
Well, duh, of course. Don't you guys know?
Yeah, those weeaboos.
Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker.
Number 5, Mario Kart 8. Number 4, of course it's on the list. You guys know what game it is. Number 4, come on.
GTA 5.
Exactly, GTA 5. Number 3, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, because of course.
Shit, yeah. Damn.
Yeah. Number 2, Monster Hunter World. That PC launch was really impressive. People were itching for it. I'm interested to see. I would love to see how many of those were pre-order numbers of people who have just been waiting for it to come out. You know what I mean? 8 months later.
Possible.
And number 1, So number 1 is Madden NFL 19, which is, United States. It's football season. It's August, of course. This is going to be surprising.
Let's go, Predators.
This is going to be surprising when I get to the next thing of the top 5 games for the year. Number 5, GTA 5, which is like, wow, that's kind of sad in some aspects, but kind of really impressive in others. Number 4.
I mean, with it ramping up towards Red Dead, it makes sense.
Number 4, Madden NFL 19. So despite it only being out, it came out the 12th.
Damn.
It's like 3 weeks. It's the 4th best-selling game for the year. Madden sells, man.
Point taken.
It's insane. People are hungry for football. Number 3, Monster Hunter World, which is really awesome for Capcom. Number 2, God of War. So despite it falling off in the NPDs a little bit, it's still up there. Number 2 for the year. And mind you, this is the only console exclusive on the top 5. And number 1, Far Cry 5, because despite whether or not they get great reviews or okay reviews, Ubisoft knows how to sell games, and they always have a top seller. It seems like every single year.
You know what? That was a good game.
Yeah, but Far Cry 5 didn't have a deep enough message, Jared. So, it's a failure.
I'm pretty sure cashing those checks, the only message they need is it was approved. Okay, good. Anything surprising there with the NPDs? Pretty straightforward, right? The Madden thing is like surprising, but it makes sense. It's like, oh, it's already in the top 5 for the year. People love Madden. So I don't think there's anything too shocking. I'm glad that Monster Hunter World sold really well on PC too, because I want it to continue to be more Western friendly. I was worried that this game might not sell well on PC, and then to be like, well, it sold well on consoles, but maybe we should just focus more on the traditional Monster Hunters. And I think this is showing Capcom, like, no, dummy, Western audiences will eat this up. Just make it a little bit more user-friendly and modern in its design.
Like Dom said, it's a PC-ass game.
Well, what I was going to say, Jared, kind of the inverse of that point is, like, I bet there's, like, some Reddit forums or whatever communities of people who are, like, Monster Hunter purists who are like pissed off that they made the game so like noob friendly and they made it, but it's like an easy Monster Hunter game.
Trust me, it's still confusing as fuck, guys. Don't worry.
Capcom sold out to sell more copies, and you know what? I would say the same thing if Dark Souls did something similar, but I'm sure that exists.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too is that they also, it's not like this is releasing in a vacuum. Monster Hunter Generation 4 or whatever recently re-released or got ported to the Switch, so there's still that traditional very obtuse Monster Hunter experience.
Yeah. The purist.
Yeah, and also like you know that they're going to have those especially for their Japan market, because that's one of their biggest markets for Capcom, and pretty sure they prefer the more obtuse stuff they've gotten used to over the years as opposed to this more westernized thing, but we'll see. Speaking of sales, though, this will be probably featured when we talk about September's NPDs next month, but Spider-Man is now the best-selling PS4 exclusive ever. Fastest-selling, not best-selling. Mistyped there. Had a typo.
Stupid fucking idiot.
So, in just 3 days, Spider-Man managed to sell 3.3 million copies, which surpassed God of War's 3.1 million copies in the same amount of time. So it is now the fastest-selling exclusive on PS4 ever. It was also reported that Spider-Man broke the PS4 record for most copies pre-ordered, coming in at 1 million copies.
Damn.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
I'm one of them.
So before this game came out, we talked about a couple of times of like how popular Spider-Man is, and don't be surprised if this game sells a ton. Currently, Uncharted 4 is at 8.7 million copies sold. It's the top-selling PS4 exclusive. God of War was at 5 million in April. We haven't had any official numbers, but it's been top 10 NPD every month since. Top 5 most of those months. So I'm assuming it's going to shake out to probably sell higher than Uncharted 4.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions for you guys. One, will Spider-Man finish as the top-selling game on the platform? And two, though it can, do you think realistically Last of Us Part 2 will break this fastest-selling mark?
Ooh, I like these questions.
It's got to be Spidey. He's too popular.
So wait,
I don't think like as good of a game as Last of Us Part 2 is probably going to be. I don't see it selling more than a Spider-Man game, man.
Yeah, like a good-ass Spider-Man game, I agree. I think Last of Us falls just short of Spider-Man sales, ultimately.
Yeah. And do you think Spider-Man will be the top-selling game on the platform when it's all said and done?
From an exclusive standpoint, yeah. Is that
Yeah.
Okay. If that's what you're asking, then yeah, because I mean, what else? There's God of War, Uncharted 4, and Last of Us. What else is in the pipeline? I don't see anything
Infamous,
else.
Second Son, Bloodborne. Come on, Tom.
I bet
Ghost of
Those are at the top of the
list. What's the biker zombie game? Days Gone.
Good one.
Days Gone is going to be up there with Spidey.
And I think the tail end of this you have to speak about too is I think Spider-Man will have a longer tail than a lot of those other exclusives, because no matter what day of the week it is, a kid can walk into a video game store and see a picture of Spider-Man and want to buy it. Whereas
I don't think spiders have tails.
Whereas like God of War and Uncharted and even The Last of Us Part 2 when it comes out, as good as those games are, those are still very video game centric, where Spider-Man is very general in terms of like, even if you're just a casual video game player, you walk into a store and like, there's a Spider-Man game on PS4, hell yeah, I'll pick that up, even though it's been 2.5 years since a game came out, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, it's definitely one of those games that people are talking to me about that never talk about video games, so there you go.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of times people get lost in the conversation is like, people are very excited for Last of Us Part 2. Those animations in the thing we saw at E3 are super impressive. That game has a chance to be a 10 out of 10. That doesn't mean that it will be the fastest selling game. That's not how that works. You know what I mean? Quality doesn't always go towards sales. Nothing against Spider-Man. We've talked about how great of a game it is. But just because Last of Us Part 2 will probably be a great game doesn't mean, oh yeah, it's automatically going to sell the most out of anything, you know? It's just a weird correlation.
I got something to say, guys.
Uh-oh. Yo, Spider-Man!
PS4. Yo, Spidey! Hey, Spider-Man PS4! It's a better game than Infamous Second Son.
Are you being truthful?
It's a better superhero game, yeah.
Wow, that's big coming from you. I know how
Yeah.
big of an Infamous fan you are. That's crazy to
And
hear.
it's no spoiler to say I was fighting Electro, and I was getting mad Infamous vibes. But, and you know, it's a little bit apples to oranges because it's Insomniac to Sucker Punch, but I mean, this game's a little bit better than Sunset Overdrive 2, which I do consider to be like a pure superhero game. So
Yeah, I liked Sunset Overdrive. I never finished it, but for me, obviously, it's an easier pull in for me with Spider-Man than it is, you know, this Ryan Reynolds wannabe. And I say that in the best intentions. I'm not trying to like shit on Sunset Overdrive, but in terms of like a character,
I'm not sure if there's a better superhero game, period, because I think it is better than Arkham Asylum.
yeah, and that's my personal favorite out of the three. We talked about that last week at length. I like Asylum more than the other two.
Yeah.
But it, like I said earlier with Dom, it's like, well, you have to pay homage to Arkham because a lot of the systems that Spider-Man kind of took from were Rocksteady. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
yeah, you gotta know where that came from. Anything else before we move on to the last couple of PlayStation stories, guys? Anything else to say about Spider-Man?
My spidey senses are tingling.
Yo, Spider-Man!
Um,
I got one last thing to say!
So this is actually a subject we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast. PlayStation Now. We've talked about how they were kind of the first ones to this type of service before Xbox, but there was a lot of issues with it. You can only stream the games, which obviously latency caused that to be a major issue. The price point, it being $20 a month, isn't really consumer friendly. There's a lot of issues with it. Well, today we kind of have a stepping stone in the right direction for PlayStation. So as of September 20th, this comes away with the PlayStation blog. PlayStation Now will now allow subscribers to download almost, and they say this specifically, almost all of the PS4 games on the service and all of the PS2 games available on PS Now. So all of the PS2 games that are available on PlayStation Now will be available to download, and almost all of the PS4 games,
Catch
which
that
is
part.
weird.
Shit.
Yeah. So the thing is this is really cool, and we'll get into this specifically. My heart sank a little bit because it wasn't followed by the announcement of a permanent price drop. So right now there's a sale that you can get in on PlayStation Now for $10 a month, which is comparable to Xbox Game Pass, but it's ending on September 25th, which is 5 days after this announcement was made, and it's going back to its original price of $20 a month. So it's a partial step in the right direction, but I'm kind of disappointed that there wasn't a price drop as well. So obviously people are going to compare PlayStation Now and Xbox Game Pass. So now that you can download games, that's great. That puts another check mark that they're even on. What Game Pass has on PlayStation Now currently is the price. It's way more affordable, year long. Obviously, PlayStation Now has sales. And Xbox's new exclusives are launching on the service, which gives even more value. I don't know if anytime soon we're going to see Days Gone will launch on PlayStation Now.
Right.
Who knows?
Nah.
I'm joking, obviously.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about this? Obviously, it's a move in the right direction, but how do you guys feel about the announcement overall?
My first instinct was it's still not something I'm all about. My first instinct was like, okay, that's good, but then I did like a double take and like looked real close, and I'm like, oh, I see. Like, well, they didn't say PS3, so to me, like, while this is a good move, it also highlights the fact that the PS4 is not backwards compatible, and obviously
it's that emotion engine,
right? Obviously, like, yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. You know, and the architecture of the PS3 just makes this, you know, a way more difficult, you know, thing than they probably would have to. I mean, that open source PS3 emulator, like even the strongest PCs in the world, can't play all but I think a handful of games reliably that are PS3, right? So I don't see a future like it's just not possible or feasible for a PS4 to ever be backwards compatible with PS3. I just don't think that's even a thing. But this kind of, while it's a good move, to me, like what it highlighted to me was it was just a reminder, like, oh yeah, they can't do it. Like they probably would if they could, but they're just like, they can't do it because they screwed up. You know.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a little better than it was.
So,
still not good enough, I think. Unless you have like awesome internet and you can stream perfectly reliably, then the catalog is actually really good.
Yeah.
For a while, I think the catalog was better than Games Pass, but Games Pass has been like just dropping bombs lately with games they added, like Division, Fallout 4, and Elder Scrolls Online. Like they've been like really beefing that shit up. So they're like overall the catalogs I think are pretty comparable. Maybe Games Pass has the edge with the all the incoming Microsoft exclusives that are going to drop on there, but
yeah,
it's still just not quite good enough. But I guess it's better than it was.
Well, and the crazy thing too is Game Pass is obviously like two of the biggest titles on it right now are both multiplayer centric and are ongoing game. Well, maybe not State of Decay 2, but Sea of Thieves most definitely is an ongoing game, right? It's a better game now than it was at launch. So there's even added value in that of a game that's continuously updating itself. Mm-hmm. Jordan, what do you think about this? Is this a step in the right direction? And the other question I have for you is, don't you think this is poor timing for them to have the sale end on the 25th? Shouldn't they have the sale go a little bit longer to get people invested now that they can actually download games?
Yeah, I think that's classic Sony there. But I think the most interesting thing about the situation is if you look at this and add the PlayStation Classic, they're like copying the other two companies on two different fronts, where they're copying Nintendo and then they're copying Microsoft, kind of. So I don't know, man. It might be like a dawning of a bright new day, or it might be the blackest night. Who knows? It could be scary times for PlayStation.
It is also one of those things of like, just because you're copying somebody doesn't mean your copy of it will be as good, as we saw with the Kinect for Xbox. Trying to copy motion controls. There's obviously other examples of that. Yeah. Speaking of PlayStation Classic, we're going to talk about that now. But before we get into it, we were talking about Game Pass and comparing it to PlayStation Now and which service is better. One of the funniest things I saw is when the PlayStation Classic was announced, Xbox, because people are like, where's the Xbox Classic, yada yada yada, basically saying like it doesn't have the lineage of Nintendo or PlayStation, and Xbox shot back and they're like, here's your Xbox Classic, it's on the console you already paid for. Yeah, which was pretty cool. And
I would just like to give a special shout out to my OG Xbox that is currently hooked up, not my original OG Xbox, but it's hooked up and it's got Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction ready to go.
Hell yeah. So this also came by way of the PlayStation blog. It was a pretty big week for the blog. So Sony has announced the PlayStation Classic, a piece of nostalgic hardware set to include 20 classic titles from the original console. It will release at a price of $99, and so far the only games confirmed in the $20 bundle are Final Fantasy VII, Tekken 3, Ridge Racer Type 4, Wild Arms, and Jumping Flash. The console also comes with an HDMI cable, a USB, and two PS1 controllers, not DualShock, original PlayStation 1 controllers. So they don't have the sticks.
Analog sticks.
Yeah. And also the AC adapter will be sold separately, because if you're going to copy Nintendo, might as well do it all the way. So, interesting. Obviously, we can all give our opinions on this, and then I have a couple questions for you guys. But for me, I think the price is a little high, in my opinion. Also, the fact that the PlayStation 1... If you told me this was $100 with the two DualShock controllers, that would make more sense to me. But the fact that it's $100 and they're not even DualShock PS1 controllers is kind of upsetting.
Just wacky, man.
And in terms of... Obviously, this is going to be a personal preference for everybody. But in terms of the titles they've so far announced... Final Fantasy VII would have got me in, but the fact that it was just like last week announced coming to Switch and Xbox, that it makes it like, oh, I don't really even need this. Tekken 3 is a nostalgia play for me personally, though from what I've seen, that game doesn't hold up very well. I have no affiliation with Ridge Racer or Wild Arms or Jumping Flash, so and also it not having DualShock controllers means that the chances of Metal Gear Solid being on this are kind of unlikely. So what do you...
They release this tiny little list, and I'm telling you, they're just waiting to see what people want, and they're going to add it.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason Metal Gear Solid isn't viable is because I don't know if it requires the DualShock, but a lot of the mechanics in the game are amplified by the DualShock controller, so people are assuming it's not in there. But in terms of this initial announcement, the price, the games that were announced, and the hardware included, what did you guys think of the announcement?
Yeah, I think it's cool. It's a cool little thing. It's not me. because I have no nostalgia for the PS1. Just like I didn't have any for the NES and the SNES Classic guys, right? But the AC adapter is like a weird, like you shake your head, like, seriously? Like, just come on. Just, come on. I'll give them the price. You know what I mean? They're looking at it from the perspective of, what they charge for those these types of games now are higher than like what Nintendo is charging for, the NES and SNES games now, like via Virtual Console or whatever. And like this is a more.
I would argue that
like
Nintendo tends to hold prices on classic games a lot more than other publishers.
All those NES games and the SNES games, like on 3DS, they're like $5 and $7 a piece.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So then on those PS1 games, via Sony's eShops or whatever, are like closer to 20 for most of them. The Final Fantasy ones, definitely. But anyway, and then like, this is technically a more advanced console than the SNES and NES, which that's a perspective, but it's kind of, I guess I'd say that's kind of dumb because they're all extremely unadvanced now. Cause you know what I mean? But they're all ROMs on a goddamn little Raspberry Pi. You know what I mean? It's not like it costs them more to put these on there than the NES Classic or whatever. But the ultimate thing is like they can charge $150 or $200 because all that like little complaints about like the cord or like the length of the controller cord, the AC adapter, like all those little complaints or like oddities, like it's all like doesn't really matter because what they're selling is the nostalgia, right? So that's a hard thing to quantify in terms of money sometimes, but it's expensive, So and maybe that is too much. Maybe there's not enough nostalgia for this thing as they're trying to charge it, but so for me it's harder to say that that's necessarily too much money. It certainly is too much for me, I would pay $20 for this thing. So.
The weird thing is that when you talk about PlayStation 1, there are multiplayer games that people have nostalgia for, but it's primarily like JRPGs and single player experiences that people remember from the PS1. So it's weird to me it's their decision to have two non-DualShock controllers when I would much rather.
That's a good point.
I would even personally justify paying for one DualShock and not getting a second controller as opposed to two without it. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. I didn't think of it like that. Yeah, but it's like
what it is.
Castlevania and Final Fantasy. Like, it's mostly single player stuff on there.
Yeah, that are most.
Jared, they want you to take these non-DualShock PlayStation 1 controllers and slide them into the side of your original fat PS3 that is backwards compatible, and then it can fly. And that's how you get the complete package because you don't really have an AC adapter, and so you kind of have to like rig it all together. And this is the Easter egg that they've put together for you.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. Jordan, for both of you, but I want to aim it at you first. So what might the other 15 games be? You mentioned Castlevania, Dom. And I also want to ask Jordan. Dom, you already answered it. Jordan, I don't think you had. Are you thinking about getting it? And the one
Probably
game, Jordan, I thought you were gonna lead this with, is, do you think I thought you were gonna say I hope this thing has Crash Team Racing.
That would be great. I definitely think you'll get some kind of Crash. You'll probably get more Final Fantasy, and you'll probably get Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Did you say that specifically, Dom?
Or just I just said Castlevania, but I think you're right. That's the one that they need, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't think I'll get it. I don't think it's worth it. Like Dom said, I could just emulate this shit if I really wanted to. I've got a lot of these games on my Vita. They go back and forth between Vita and PS3. Not PS4, but it's like... this is definitely a day late and a dollar short. It's weird how it's not the complete package like I was joking about, and so there's just too many drawbacks. And then if it's the same deal as the two Nintendo Classic consoles, then I don't want to be hunting it down. It's just not worth it to me.
I think it'll sell like hotcakes though. Like I have no
Sure.
qualms about that.
But it also depends
It'll
if they
be
do
cool
the
to
Nintendo
have.
limit thing, right? Where it's like,
Right.
it's sold out.
Yeah. It'll be cool to have sitting in your living room if you can grab one.
It looks dope. I'll say that.
It does
Somebody
look
with nostalgia for the
Sure.
PS1, I really like the way it looks.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go over some top PS1 games here. just that are possible choices. We talked about Metal Gear Solid and how not having the DualShock might limit that. Yeah. Crash Bash, which I don't remember, which I'm assuming is a Crash Party game. I don't know if that'll make the list. The Resident Evil games are weird because Resident Evil 2 Remake is coming out early next year, and then there's already a Resident Evil Remake that you can play on current-gen consoles. So that's weird. There's Digimon World, which I vaguely remember. Driver 2, which could be a possible choice. People like the Driver games. The Crash and Spyro...
There's going to be a couple more JRPGs, even besides Final Fantasy.
It's going to be a sports game too, right?
So Crash... I'm going through the list real quick. So Crash and Spyro, those are weird. Those will probably not be on it considering we just got 2 remasters. So I don't know if Activision would license it for this if they want people to buy the newer versions for a higher price, and they'll get 100% revenue there. So that's weird. Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy Tactics, which I've heard a lot about. People love that game, so that'd be an interesting pick for it. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Tarzan, which is obviously a licensed game. Gran Turismo 2, Mega Man X4, Dino Crisis 2, Chrono Cross, which is possibly one of those choices like you said, Jordan, another JRPG, GTA 2, which would be a pretty cool choice for it, Tales of Destiny 2, which I've never heard of, Legend of Dragoon, which a lot of people love, so that'd be another JRPG, Xenogears, another JRPG, Dragon Quest 7, another JRPG. That's what the console was known for. So that's what I was saying earlier, Dom. It's weird that like they wouldn't do one DualShock controller and they did 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People don't talk about the PlayStation and be like all of those multiplayer experiences.
Right.
Despite it having Tekken and Mortal Kombat. So. It also has Oddworld, which people love. And this is a game that I've heard a lot of people really enjoy that are like in the gaming industry, but outside of it, I've never heard anybody talk about it. Brave Fencer Musashi. Have you guys ever heard of that game?
Yeah.
Yeah. People go nuts over that game. One Kyle Bossman. One Kyle Bossman loves that game. It's like imagine Sekiro, but on the PlayStation 1. Dumb.
No thanks. I fucking won't. I won't imagine it.
Yeah.
No thanks, says Dom.
I guess that's pretty much it for the show. Since we're going to be hopping into what we're going to be playing, one thing I wanted to mention is I was looking at the voice cast for Spider-Man, and there's some interesting actors who are in it. I know neither of you are into Overwatch, but did either of you play it, or have you watched the cinematics for it?
Not one.
No, but I don't know if I mentioned the voice actor for Miles is the same as the current animated series.
Yeah. So the guy who voices Norman Osborn, Jordan, is the guy who does Lex Luthor and Superboy in Young Justice, which is dope.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
And the guy who voices Otto Octavius is the guy who voiced Mordin Solus in the Mass Effect series.
Huh. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, those are great examples, but then even like the stars, it's a stacked voice cast, I would say. I mean, it's really out of control how good the cast is from top to bottom. Yeah,
Yuri is voiced by Tara Platt, who isn't as famous, but she's like in a bunch of stuff. Like she's voice acted. Yeah. She was in Bayonetta 2 and World of Warcraft and a lot of things. The other one I wanted to mention, the reason I asked you guys about Overwatch, is because Reinhardt, who's the big silver armored character with the hammer, he's a very beloved character and he has a very specific voice. The guy who voices him is the same guy who does J. Jonah Jameson. So, which is a really cool tie-in there.
I gotta give a shout out. There's of course Kingpin, who's is it Travis Willingham?
Yeah, Travis Willingham. Yeah,
Willingham. Yeah. And then of course gotta give a huge shout out to Six, Jason Street, aka Scott Porter, who plays Harry Osborn.
Yeah, which he'll have a way bigger role, we assume, in the second game.
No comment.
Yeah. Shit.
Well, we know that
even you could tell just from doing his side missions.
Well, yeah, the research points is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about his mom and stuff. I lost my train of thought. The voice actors. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention some of them because I don't think they get enough love. When we talked about the facial animations last week and how great they were, and I just top to bottom, this game is just in that department in terms of voice acting and performance is really incredible. Like the cast they brought together is super great. Yeah.
Just to explain who Scott Porter is, Jason Street is quarterback in Friday Night Lights, the series, which is a fantastic series that you should watch more than one season of.
He's also the main character, one of the main characters in the Madden long shot story mode.
Yeah, and he's played Nightwing in Arkham Knight. He's played Cyclops in the Marvel anime, so he does a lot of cool voice acting.
Yeah, and he also does a lot of stuff for like charity and stuff, which is awesome.
Shout out to Scott Porter.
In terms of what we're going to be playing, I might start up the second playthrough of Spider-Man. I'm not sure.
Damn.
I was thinking about before Assassin's Creed Odyssey comes out, I was thinking about hopping into Origins again, but I kind of don't want to burn myself out before it comes out, so I'm like, I don't know.
So, do you have anything from PlayStation Plus that you might want to play on your PS4?
I'm not subscribed to PlayStation Plus, so.
I thought you had, built a couple games up, didn't you?
I do, but, I just
but then you would have to resubscribe to play them.
I'll eventually get to it, because I have Bloodborne and Ratchet and Clank, which I definitely want to play, but with a couple of games I have to buy soon, I can't justify buying the console, buying Spider-Man, and then subscribing to a service that I'm not really going to use a whole lot. You know what I mean? When I have the free time, I'm like, I'm going to play through Bloodborne or Ratchet and Clank, then I'll subscribe to it.
Well, even make the decision this month, buy a month of Plus or whatever, and play through those games, and that'd be it, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, so I want to get to the Dragon Prince, which came out, American Vandal. Scott Pilgrim got put on Netflix, and I've never seen that movie, so I think I'll go and watch that.
Nice. Have you ever read them?
No, I've kind of been turned off to it, honestly, which is weird because I'm a super nerd, and it seems like super nerds love it, but it just doesn't. From everything I've seen, it just doesn't vibe with me personally. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we'll see though. Brie Larson's in it, which is dope. So. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Chris Evans, Captain America.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Spider-Man.
So you said you're beating it. Do you think you're platinuming it this weekend, or is that too much to ask for?
Yeah, I might not get.
I'm beating it.
I might not get quite that far.
Okay.
So I guess I'm pausing on Final Fantasy VII, and I'll buy it again on Switch when it comes out, since I'm not too far into it. And then now that I've finished Spider-Man, I'm sure I'll jump back into it at some point, but finish the story, and I've done a bunch of side stuff already, and I have basically all the suits, and I'm not trying to get a platinum. I don't really care as much, but I think I'll jump back into playing through the Kingdom Hearts stuff, and then just kind of watching something on the second screen, Dom's face, and then I've been watching the Spider-Man movies to go along with Kind of Funny's review series, which we've talked about, of course. And then I rewatched Spider-Man Homecoming as well because...
excellent movie.
Everyone loves that movie, and I think it's a good movie. I do think it's overrated. I won't jump into it because it's a whole deal, but of course I really like Spider-Man 2. And there's plenty of stuff that's wrong with it since it's so damn old, I guess. But obviously Spider-Man 3 was not great. So I might throw on Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, which I've seen those movies at least once a piece. But I might throw those on while I'm playing Kingdom Hearts. And then, shout out. I'm only a couple of episodes into Batman Beyond, but obviously I'm all about that. And just going through a bunch of different series. I need to jump into BoJack Horseman season 5 because that just came out, and BoJack Horseman is one of the best fucking shows, man. I love that shit. So little shout out to that. But we'll see if I get around to playing anything else. I kind of talked, I don't know if I talked before the show or during the show with you, Jared, about all my signal problems with the Switch, so I've been just basically playing the Switch to fucking test it out and try to get it in its own special little chamber in the living room where it's not distracted by all the electrical signals running about. So, anyways, yeah.
Two quick things. You mentioned Batman Beyond, and then you mentioned Kingdom Hearts, and it reminded me of two things I wanted to mention. One, I talked to you about this on the messenger or messages, Dom. I was like really underwhelmed with the DC Universe streaming app.
Oh yeah.
I did the free trial, and I'm like, I knew it going in, so it met my expectations in a negative way. I was just like, I don't know how this justifies $8. Like, we've heard the rumors of Disney service, and now we have confirmation of some of the stuff that's going to be on there, and that's reportedly going to be about $10. And I'm like, the amount of stuff Disney's going to offer in comparison to this, I can see if it was like if it was Warner Brothers streaming app, but the fact that it's only DC, the comic selection is very limited.
Here's the thing, Jared. You're on that DC streaming service reading comics. You're not even going to see Batman's dick. So it's not worth it. And I'll tell you that much right now.
The weird thing, if you were going to launch a DC service and you're like, oh, we're going to have movies on there, don't you think you'd have the Dark Knight trilogy on there at the very least?
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that it seems like it's
very
missing.
weird.
And so I figured it was like that. It's great to have Batman up there at launch, especially, like I've mentioned a billion times since it's being remastered right now, the animated series.
Well, that's not worth $8 a month, in my opinion.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying that is a plus. And then to have Superman. You know, if they had some random shit like Static Shock on there, just like filling in the gaps. Static Shock is on there?
Yeah.
What about the Zeta Project? Because that also crosses over with Batman and Superman animated series. So shit like that, super deep cuts and more comics. But anyways, no Batman dick, no subscription. You know what I'm saying, boys?
The last thing is, I really want the Kingdom Hearts collection on Xbox, right? I've been saying that forever.
Yeah.
A piece of information I found out this week. I don't know if it's new information, but it was spreading around as if a lot of people had found out about it for the first time. So I don't know if it's one of those things that it was a fact that was buried. You know what I mean? And people recently rediscovered it. But when Final Fantasy Spirits Within, is that the correct title, Jordan? The movie, the animated movie?
Yeah, the movie, yeah.
When that flopped and cost Square Enix a butt-ton of money, Sony bailed them out, and because of that, Sony got 14% of Square Enix stock, like total.
Damn.
So there was kind of like a non-negotiable, like, hey, we get your games kind of shit. And recently Sony gave back those stocks. And that's where you're seeing Final Fantasy come to Xbox and all these Square games finally make their way over to the Xbox platform. That was just something I never knew, which is kind of crazy. 14%, that's quite a bit for a company like Square Enix. That's it for episode 112. Catch us next week. Hopefully Dom is in the game by then. We'll probably talk about our thoughts next week, and then we're going to do the spoiler cast. We're going to not only the story in Spider-Man, but the second half of the podcast, I want to talk about our dreams, wants, and speculations for the second game. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you can, please follow us on YouTube, subscribe to us, leave a like if you can. Follow us on iTunes, leave a review, that definitely helps. Follow us on Twitter at CTRLINT, that's Controlled Interest Abbreviated. I am at Jared_. Dom is at Dom's Oreos. Jordan is at Melomotus. The person would just the person would just at Jared. Give me that goddamn username by now. Thank you and have a good day. Bye.